The whole Alex Hormozi methodology is really geared towards around this theory called the theory of constraints, that businesses grow to the level of their biggest constraint. The question we should always ask ourselves is, are we solving the biggest constraint in our business? Most of your time and energy should be spent attacking that number one constraint. You're the CEO. The person that pitched me on the mastermind was Alex Hormozi himself, and it was a big investment. They pitched it at $35,000. The whole process is having them take a look at your business, identify the constraints, identify solutions. I went into it saying, hey, you know what? I think this can be really valuable for my company. I really believe in this methodology. I just wanted to have a chance to sit down, focus on growing my business, and that's what I did. Okay, folks, we are live. We are live. Thanks for the folks. So we're streaming live into the Facebook group, and we got a few folks here joining me live within the Zoom webinar. That's always the best because I can actually watch the chat, and if you guys have any questions, you can drop them here. So if you want to, have some great interaction, jump into the Zoom webinar. But we're also streaming this live within the group, and in a few weeks this will be on my YouTube channel as well, right? In case you're not able to make it right off the bat, don't worry about it. But welcome, thanks for jumping in. Want to talk today about a really awesome experience that I had. For those folks that don't know, or you missed my last webinar that was a few months ago. This was back in, I think it went live back in June, talking about the first workshop that I attended. So I'll take a couple minutes to give you a little bit of a history on this, right? So I've been following, Alex Hormozi for probably about 5 years now, right? I first met him on a Zoom call like this, actually. He was a guest speaker in a coaching group that I was a member of. And this is, I think it was Robbie Abuvala's group. He's an internet marketer. I was there, as part of his program, and he said, hey, I want you to meet this really smart guy. He's good at marketing. His name is Alex, right? So we jumped in, and, to be very honest with you guys, I was like, oh, great, huge muscle guy, gym owner. What does he know about? Let's see what he knows about marketing. I was a little skeptical, but we got it was only a dozen people on that call, and Alex for an hour, and I was just very impressed with the guy. I'll be very honest with you, like, oh, holy cow, this guy actually knows what he's talking about, and just the level of insight and the tips and the strategies he shared were just really, really good. So it was very impressive. On that first call with him, he gave me a suggestion for my company, my agency, that immediately made me more money, right? Like right off the bat. I didn't even know who the guy was, right? So I thought it was interesting. But at that time, he wasn't well known. He wasn't, like a big figure in the business world, but he was making $15-16 million a year in profit, right? From Gym Launch, his gym marketing agency. So I thought that was already very impressive. He just wasn't well known. A couple of years later, after that, I got introduced to his podcast. Like, his podcast was really taking off. His YouTube channel was starting to really take off. And I found that content very useful. I thought it was great. It was similar to my webinar with him from a few years before, right? So I thought that was, really useful. I was listening to the podcast, and I would catch the YouTube channel every now and then. And then the first book came out, and then the second book came out, and I thought it was even better, right? And then now the third book already came out this year. So I just became a fan. I thought his content was very high quality and just very geared towards people in my situation, small business owners, right? Like all kinds, real estate, e-commerce, agencies, marketing, all kinds of, different businesses. And I thought it was very useful, right? So I thought it was awesome. And earlier this year, I became aware, and I didn't realize this, but this had already been going on most of 2024. This new advisory division that they opened up within his company, acquisition.com. So fast forward, right? He sells his agency to a private investment firm, private equity firm, and he becomes, starts creating content and basically makes like a family office, like an investment group, to buy companies and help them scale. And last year, they create an advisory division within his company. What is an advisory division? They do courses and seminars for business owners. They sell information and coaching and training, right? They create that division within the company. This was last year. I found out about it this year. I probably became aware that it was even the thing. I became aware of it probably in February or March of this year, that they had an event. At that time, this is the only event they had. It's called the Scaling Workshop. If you guys don't know what that is, you should Google it. Alex Hormozi Scaling Workshop. It's an event they have every week in Las Vegas in the company headquarters, and they bring in about 100 business owners, right? It costs $5,000 to attend. It's a 2-day event, actually. It's a 2-day event. You go out there, and the first day is a big presentation from different members of that staff, and then the next day is a mastermind. You're grouped with about 15 people, and you talk to different experts on different topics: customer acquisition, customer retention, operations, sales, marketing, the whole shebang, right? And it's just open forum. Ask them whatever question you want throughout that second day. So I went to that event. This was back in May, and it was a phenomenal event, right? You should check out my video. I go into a lot more detail about it. And in that event, they pitch you on what is called the high level mastermind. They call it VAM, VAM, value action method, right? So it's like, it's their methodology of scaling companies, basically, right? And they pitch you on this. And this is no longer a $5,000 investment, right? They pitch you on it. It's another event. You get to go. They pitched me on this event. I would have to go back to Las Vegas 2 more times during the next year, and they would focus on my business. So the same thing that I did at this scaling workshop, I was going to do again, but instead of being in a room with 100 people, I was going to be a group of 10 people, right? And instead of me coming at them with different questions, before the event, they were going to focus on my business and help me understand what the biggest constraint to my growth was, okay? And the whole, Alex Hormozi methodology, the whole company is really geared towards around this theory called the theory of constraints, okay? That businesses grow to the level of their biggest constraint. And a lot of times it has to do with you as the founder, because, for a lot of our businesses, we do all of the key roles. I mean, myself included, right? Like I am the marketing guy and I'm the CEO, and I do a lot of activities within my company. Even though I have a lot of staff now, I'm the guy. Like I'm the guy that does a lot of it, right? And the companies tend to grow to the level of their biggest constraint. And that usually has to do something to do with the owner, with the founder, right? Because you're like, you do everything, or you hire people to do everything, or you make decisions on what to do every day, right? So as a CEO, that's your job, to make decisions and to allocate resources, okay? Your job and I don't care if you're a one-person, a solo real estate agent, or you're a leader of a 20-person team, you're the CEO of that company. And your main job is to, right, make decisions and allocate resources. Doesn't matter. That's your job, okay? The theory of constraints says that most business owners do not allocate resources towards their biggest constraint. They get confused, they get distracted, they get frustrated, and they try to solve other problems that are, again, as business owners, we have a bunch of things we can do, a bunch of possibilities, a bunch of problems to solve, right? Real problems. But the question we should always ask ourselves, right, is, are we solving the biggest constraint in our business? Are we solving the biggest constraint in our business, right? Like I'll give you an example. Typical real estate agent, right? Let's say, you had a great year. The last 12 months, you've closed 21 transactions. That's a great year. That's twice the typical amount of transactions a full-time agent does in the US. Did 21. That's amazing. What if you want to grow more, right? What if you want to build a team? What if you want to increase productivity? You want to do more transactions, get more income. Great. What is the biggest constraint for you to get there? Okay. That might seem like, for a lot of agents, that might seem like a really obvious answer. Gus, I just need more leads. I just need more clients, and I'm going to close more deals, right? The theory of constraints says, you know what? Maybe, right? You should actually think about this more. Like, what is stopping you from getting twice as many leads? Okay. You should ask that question. What is stopping me from doubling my production next year? Oh, I don't have enough leads. Great. How did you get your leads the last 12 months? Oh, well, they came from my sphere. Great. How can you work that sphere more effectively, more productively? Oh, well, it's only a 100-person sphere, so it's not that big. Okay. You might have tapped out that lead source. So just working it harder is not going to get you to double your production. It's not, actually, right? You need to develop a brand new lead source that's more scalable, okay? A more scalable lead source. Okay, great, because I want to go to from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 100 transactions. Like, what kind of lead source can help me get to that point? Okay, great. You have to invest the time, the energy, the money, the resources to develop a brand new. You don't stop what's already working. That's the key thing. You don't stop that, but you're allocating your time and your resources at developing a new one. That's your number one constraint. I need a scalable lead source to grow. Otherwise, I'm going to do what most agents do. I closed 21 last year. I might close 19 next year, and then I'm going to stay at that same level of that ceiling of achievement. I'm not going to break through. And a lot of agents, they can have a bad year if they go to 15, to 12, to 10, and then they have a bad year. And then what happens the next year? You're discouraged, you're demotivated, right? Maybe the economy is not great. And then you go out of business within a couple of years, right? That's typical for a lot of real estate agents. It's reality, guys, okay? Because they are unable to break past that biggest constraint. Not because they're not smart, not because they're not hard workers, but because they either failed to identify what that constraint was, or even if they knew what it was, they couldn't figure out how to solve it, and they got frustrated, and they focused on something else. That's a really common issue too, right? You know what the biggest issue is. Yeah, I need more leads. Okay, how do I get them? I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. Didn't work. Okay, well, I'm just going to go do what I've always done. That's not solving the problem, right? That's not it. So the theory of constraints is big on that, okay? The biggest problem most business owners have is what it says. It's identifying what their key constraint is and focusing time and resources. Most of your time and energy should be spent attacking that number one constraint. And for a lot of business owners, myself included, that's really hard to do, right? It's hard to do because there's a reason that's your biggest constraint. It's your biggest problem because you either lack the experience, the skills, the knowledge to solve it. There's a reason that's your biggest constraint. For some business owners, it's actually, guess what? They can scale up their business. There's just not enough time in the day for them to actually close those deals. So their biggest constraint is not actually, I can't get enough leads. I know that sounds crazy, but trust me that this is true. There are agents that get so many clients, they drop the ball, people cancel, things expire, they're not doing a great job. Their issue actually isn't getting enough leads. They're just not closing enough deals from the leads they have. Their operations are stuck. They don't have a great fulfillment process, right? They're not able to get most of their clients to sign, most of their buyers to close, most of their sellers to sell. So they have a leaky bucket. They're getting a lot of clients. They're just not closing a lot of deals. They're falling through. They're canceling. They're going with other agents. They're just not working out. That they have a different constraint. Okay. Their primary constraint is usually their inability to hire and delegate parts of their business. So they can focus on what they do best, which is marketing and sales. And they can have a great admin, an EA, an operations manager, a transaction coordinator. They can actually help them fulfill the promise, right? As a business owner, if you're in sales, you're making the promise. Your marketing and your sales should be about attracting people, making the promise. Fulfillment keeps the promise. Fulfillment keeps the promise, okay? And if you're a solo agent, don't worry, you do both. It's all you. But if you have a team and you want to scale, you usually have to get help on the fulfillment side first, okay? On the fulfillment side first to open up the time, the energy, the resources to actually do more marketing and close more deals, okay? That might be a different constraint. So hopefully that makes sense with the theory of constraints, how that works, because that's how this whole process works, okay? That's how this whole system works. So when you sign up for something like VAM, right, you're saying, I believe that theory works, and I want you guys that know what you're doing better than I do, I want you to take a look at my business, and I want you to help me identify my primary constraint, and maybe some other ones, right? And I want you to help me solve them. I want you guys to look at my company like with a magnifying glass, and with your experience, I want you to tell me what's the issue, okay, and what's stopping me from growing. And here is where the value of something like this comes through, because here's the crazy thing. I was talking to some of the organizers, some of the managers at the company, and they have looked at hundreds, and some of them even thousands of companies at this point. And they've only been doing it for about a year and a half, which is crazy. Year and a half, almost 2 years. Thousands of companies they've looked at. And guess what? They haven't looked at thousands of different problems, the 1,000 different problems. It's not 1,000 different problems. It's usually the same 3 or 4 problems. They have to figure out a better lead source. They have to get better at sales, close those leads. They have to get better at fulfillment and retention, right? It's usually one of those 3 things. So this team gets really good at pattern matching, all right? They go, oh, you're in the, one of the people that I worked with this time around was someone in the mortgage space. So they paired me up with another real estate person, right? Last time I was there back in May, I sat next to someone that had my exact same business, actually. They have a virtual assistant company, a lead conversion company with virtual assistants, but they were focused on the medical space, not the real estate space, which I thought was phenomenal. That was just worth the price of admission, getting to compare notes with a fellow business owner that runs my same business, right? I thought that was amazing. And I actually got to meet some other real estate folks in there as well. Out of the 100 people in the first workshop, out of 100 people, I think like 5 or 10 of us were real estate, right? Which I thought was awesome. We're in the real estate space. And the second one, I'll talk to more about. I'll walk through the whole process in a minute. But they try to pair you up with people that have similar kinds of businesses or similar, markets, right? So just to make it more valuable. So the whole process is having them take a look at your business, identify the constraints, identify solutions, help you implement. Okay, that's it. And the cool thing about this, I'll be very honest with you guys, when you're at the initial workshop, the scaling workshop that I was at in May, the person that pitched me on the mastermind was Alex Hormozi himself. Like he would get up both days and he would just tell you, hey, if you're really interested in this and you want us to help you out, sign up for this mastermind. And here's all the reasons you should do it. Do it, right? Like jump in. And it was a big investment. They pitched it at $35,000 for the year. But if you signed up at the event while you were there, it was only $30,000. Only $30,000. It's a massive amount of money. Like maybe only one time I made an investment comparable to that for a whole year. But this one was really just 2 events, 2 in-person events, 2 days. And what I just went to right now in October was day one of VAM. Okay, so I thought it over, and what helped seal the deal for me was if you signed up the first day, like if you're one of the first ones to sign up, you got to actually hang out with Alex after the event, after the first day, which I thought was awesome. So I was able to have a conversation with him. Very smart guy, very funny guy. Sometimes his content comes out as like very bro company tech guru, very hustle culture kind of content. It comes off that way, and then he's like a really serious, intense guy. And in person, he's just he just cracks jokes all the time. He's actually a much funnier guy than I thought he would be. He's a very pleasant guy and very insightful, right? Like if his whole team is really good at pattern matching, he is like world class at pattern matching. I thought was really awesome. So I got to hang out with him a little while. He talked to me about my business. He gave me his initial thoughts on what I should do for my business. I thought it was interesting. And then I was signed up for VAM. What happened next, I'm going to go through the VAM process, right? That was like a 20-minute intro. So sorry, like 15, 20-minute intro. Sorry about that. But all of that I think was important to understand like this whole method, right? This whole process, okay? And here's another thing, guys, right? If you get, a lot of folks messaged me about this webinar today, and they said they were considering either joining the scaling workshop or joining this high-level mastermind, right? So my recommendation is you're doing the right thing. You should inform yourself first. Get some real input, real feedback. Because if you look online, there's a lot of really positive reviews about this event and these programs, and there's a few negative, like really negative reviews. You should read those. Like, be informed. See what people that enjoyed it and got a lot of value from it, see what they say, and then see some people didn't see the value. I did that, to be very honest with you, right? I saw a lot of really good reviews, and I saw a few, but really bad reviews too. So I looked at those, and that's a smart thing to do, okay? So I went into it saying, hey, you know what? I think this can be really valuable for my company. I really believe in this methodology. Let's see what they say. I think they're going to save me a lot of time and do it. Because guess what? You can actually follow this methodology 100% on your own, okay? I'm going to be really clear about that. If you only have the time and the budget to attend that first event, scaling workshop, that can be super valuable, guys. Like they're going to teach you the same method. They're going to give you the same kind of pointers. You just have to go implement on your own, like 100% on your own. That can be fine for some folks. And I know a lot of folks that did that. I did that, okay? Because my mastermind session, I went to the scaling workshop in May. I didn't go to the mastermind until October. That's a 5-month difference. I was actually scheduled to go out in July, but due to a family issue, I had to reschedule, okay? So I should have gone in July. I did not wait until October to get started. I was implementing already what I thought were my main constraints, and I went through the whole process regardless of not going into the mastermind. So you should consider that too, right? But I found going to this event, I gave myself permission to really focus on this and just accelerate the process, right? So that was really it. So if you want help with the implementation, speed and accuracy, I think it's worth it to go to the higher level event. So in contrast to the first scaling workshop, which you just kind of filled out a form and that was it, before you go to the high level mastermind, they have you fill out a much bigger form. Let me just tell you that. Like it was like a 4 or 5 page form. Guys, it took me like 2 weeks to gather all the information, financial information, lead conversion information, marketing channel information. Where do you get your leads? How much do you make for each one of your clients? What's your gross profit per customer? Like all these different, I had to look these up sometimes. I had to go to Alex's book or to Alex's video and like define this term for me. I have no idea what it even means. Oh, okay. Like I had to go fill out all this information and provide it to them and go, hey, so they could get an pretty accurate picture of what my business is, how it works, what do we sell, what do we offer, who do we offer it to, what's our ideal client avatar, all those things, okay? So I had to fill out this 4 or 5 page online form with a ton of information. I remember one page specifically took me a whole week to fill out. Just one of those pages, 1 week, because I just asked for a lot of detailed lead conversion and financial information. I just didn't have it. And guys, let me tell you, going through the process of identifying your best lead sources, identifying your conversion rates for you, and if you have agents on your team, their conversion rates, your conversion rates, guys, that alone was probably worth it for me, okay? Because I realized in my company, Power ISA, for our internal operation, our sales team, our marketing team, we didn't have great metrics, guys. We didn't have great numbers. And there's a term for this in the Hormozi world. It's called spreadsheet empire, right? You don't have, it's not worth it for you to invest in a big all-in-one, tracking system of record, right? Like a Salesforce or a ERP or something. That doesn't make any sense for a small company, right? So you track everything in disconnected spreadsheets. So when you want to look at really valuable data, like what's your best performing lead source? Who's your best performing salesperson? Where's your biggest, vulnerability in your KPIs? It takes you a long time to do that because all this data is everywhere. Okay. Well, I went through that. Okay. I went through that process. And now on my company we have a process to look at that data, not once a year like I did this time. Some of that data we look at once a week. Okay. With my team. We look at it every single week now. We didn't do that before. So VAM helped me before I even set foot in the room. It was already helping me. I'm like, holy cow, this information looks really valuable and it's important because I need to make decisions. And if I don't have good data, how am I going to make good decisions, right? If you don't have good data, you don't know your numbers, your conversion rate, your best performing lead source from the last 12 months, your most profitable lead source from the last 12 months. If you don't have data like that and you don't have an easy way to get it, that's the first problem you should solve, probably. That's I don't know if that's going to be the biggest constraint in your business, but it's going to help you find the biggest constraint in your business, okay? That data. If you don't have good data, you're not going to make good decisions, okay? So I spent the first phase was just gathering the data, filling out this form. Then I had a meeting with an advisor. They assigned to you. This is actually one of the I guess small issues I saw initially. So again, for this webinar, I'm going to talk about the good and the bad. Things I thought were amazing and well worth it. I've already spoken about a lot of those, and things that really could have gotten better. Okay, like one thing I didn't love was there were essentially 3 people I was going to be working with. Right, there was like a customer account manager, right, that I assigned to me. There was a VAM analyst that was assigned to me, and then there was like an advisor that was assigned to me. And at different parts of the process, it wasn't super clear to me who did what, right? So it was a little bit confusing in the beginning. It got less confusing as the project went on, but I didn't love that. And I will say at the end. So I want you, if you guys are really interested in attending this event in the future, wait until the end, because I'm going to talk about some changes they're planning on this event. Okay, so that's really important, because the event that I went to is high likelihood it won't be exactly the same as the event you attend in a few months or next year. Okay, it's very important to understand that. Okay, and I'll talk more about it at the end. So I talked to my advisor. They reviewed all my information, right? And they start like testing you. Hey, so we think your primary constraint is either this or this. What do you think about that? They're always trying to look for your feedback. We think this. Do you hate that? Do you love that? What do you think? There's a constant request for kind of that feedback, right? And I actually ended up doing, I think it was 2 or 3 a different. So I spoke to that team 3 times before I went to the mastermind. I think you're only supposed to talk to them 1 time. I actually had 3 meetings with them to talk about financials, to talk about my primary constraint. And then since I was supposed to go in July, since we dragged it out until October, I met with them again just to make sure things hadn't changed too much. And they had changed on some metrics, right? Like some things that I wanted to change. Actually, the data was different now because it was 5 months later, right? So I met with them again and confirmed all that information again. And I'll be honest with you guys, my biggest fear, my biggest concern with a model like this, like VAM, is that they're never really going to know your business as well as you do. Okay, that was really my thing. They're very smart people. They like I said, they do a great job to pattern match. They're amazing at what they do, 100%. But are they really going to know my business better than me? Are they really going to be able to advise me on how to run my business? Can they really do that? Or are they just giving you like high level pattern matching advice and doesn't really apply to you? That was my biggest issue. So I think it was helpful to have like multiple touch points with the team before I even set foot there, right? But that was it. So about a few weeks before, we're done. We got all the information. I'll see you on your VAM day. Call it VAM day. I'll see you there, and then we'll give you what they call a spotlight, okay? So the way that VAM works on the actual day, you get there, right? You arrive. It's a smaller group of people, okay? I think I was paired up. I think there was 8 of us. So there was 8 people, smaller group, and there's several groups going on at the same time. I think there was like maybe 4 or 5, I think, or 5 or 6 groups at the same time. But you don't really talk to them. You really only talk to your own group the whole day, which is very different than the last event, okay? And throughout the day, you talk with your advisor. You get 1 session, 1 hour, with your advisor, and they're going to present basically the recommendations. They're going to tell you, we identified these constraints for you, and here's our plan to attack each one of these constraints. What do you think? And then there's a back and forth. There's a Q&A with you, and there's a Q&A with everyone in your group, actually, right? Which I thought was really interesting. And then you do that throughout the day. Everyone in that group gets to talk to their advisor. There's usually 1 or 2 people per advisor per session. So you get anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes to talk about your company with your advisor in that group. And then you can talk to them afterwards as many times as you want, during lunch, during the breaks, during whatever, right? So you have access to them during the whole day. I thought that was cool too. So initially when we first got there, I realized right off the bat, this was a very different group than the time before, okay? Because when I went to the scaling workshop, there was 100 of us in there. It's a big, big, big group. And there was all kinds of business, people that were just getting started, 20-year veterans, a couple really, really big companies, but mostly really, really small companies, right? That's the bulk of people. At this event, there was a very different profile, guys. Like I felt like the small fish in the big pond at this event, right? There were people that were doing $1 million a month. And there was a lot of them doing $1 million in sales a month. Some of them did information products. Some of them were agencies. Some of them were actually, one of them was like a big mortgage company. It was impressive. Like, holy cow, right? And those are the people you got to hang out all day with, which I thought was fascinating. And the interesting thing was they were each there that day to solve one specific constraint for their business, right? Or one big problem they had. And one of the fun things was to ask them, hey, what do you think what's your constraint, right? And during each presentation, they got to talk about what their biggest constraint was, okay? and they got to like go back and forth with their advisor on how to attack it, clarifying questions, right? I thought it was fascinating. Early on, one of the members there told me that it was like his 8th or ninth VAM day, okay? 8th or ninth. He wasn't even sure at that point. Like the 8th or ninth time he had sat down and had at Alex Hormozi headquarters to go get some advice. And I was like, what? Because I know how expensive these things are. Like, holy cow. And I said, why did it keep going? Like that was a guy I'm still in contact with to this day. It's been a few days after that. I'm still in contact with him because this is just a really great guy, smart guy, very willing to share. And, he said, hey, he keeps going because, and I thought this was very, very insightful. Every time he solves the biggest constraint in his business, he solves it, he breaks through, and he runs up against a new constraint. There's something else to fix, okay? Which is, again, not unexpected. I totally get that. He's growing, but you don't just grow with no issues, guys. You grow to the next constraint, right? If you had a big sales or marketing issue, you solve that, you get a bunch more customers, suddenly your fulfillment becomes your biggest constraint. Now I have to staff up and train them and hold them accountable to service to that level so we can continue to grow sustainably without losing a bunch of clients, right? So you grow sales and marketing, you grow fulfillment. You grow sales and marketing, you grow fulfillment. Up and up and up, ad infinitum, right? So he was there solving like the third or fourth problem he had come up with. And he did a lot of changes to his business, actually. It was really interesting. They changed their whole marketing and their sales process, and they changed it. At that time, he had a lot of success with a new offer, with a new fulfillment plan, but his sales were lacking, right? He was a really good salesperson, but his team wasn't that good. So, that was like his big problem to solve at that session. I thought was really interesting, okay? And each person in that room in my group had a different problem to solve. One of the folks was having a big issue on expansion, right? Should they double down on one location or should they open a second location, right? That was kind of their big problem that they wanted to solve because they wanted to grow, but they weren't sure if doubling down and doing the same, with the same team or opening up a second was the right thing. And they discussed that, right? Another person was there specifically to help get some advice on how to scale up their podcast, how to grow their podcast. Okay. I thought it was interesting. That was really interesting. And, and there was other problems, like another person, really successful business, right? Millions of dollars in revenue every year. But their biggest issue was that most of their revenue came from specific events throughout the year. They would make $2, $3, $4 million in a single launch. They call them launch events for their courses. But they wanted to have a recurring revenue model. They didn't have a recurring revenue model. They only had like a one-time revenue model, and they wanted to get away from that, balance it out, right? I thought that was really interesting too. And one thing one of the guys told me early on, the guy that had been there 8 or 9 times, one thing he said was, hey, you're here on your first VAM day. If it's your first VAM day, remember this. You're going to learn a lot of stuff about your business during your. Also going to learn a lot of really awesome things from everybody else's spotlight session in this group. So be ready for that. Like pay attention, take notes, ask questions, because and that was 100% true. I got some amazing insights and some great suggestions, ideas from other people's sessions and not just my own. Okay. So I thought it was really interesting. That was also unexpected benefit there. And so we went throughout the day getting all this different advice, and then it was my turn, right? And that's when, I had already met my advisor the last time I was out there, but I got to talk to him one-on-one. He looked at my business, and he identified, these one primary constraint, which for us is retention, right? Customer churn. It's called customer churn. We wanted to bring down our customer churn, and that was our primary constraint. Our secondary constraint was, developing a new acquisition channel, which for us is paid ads, right? Paid ads. Prior constraint, reduce churn, increase customer retention. Secondary constraint, develop this new lead source. And then they even gave me a third constraint because they saw a big opportunity, like a huge opportunity for our company, saying, this is not your primary constraint, but this can really help you, which is having a more robust and better referral program. Okay, a more robust and a much better referral program. I thought that was really interesting. Okay, so the biggest thing there, for me was kind of going through those suggestions and doing that. And here's where, I said I would talk about the good and the bad. So in each one of those different constraints, Some of their suggestions were amazing and very spot on. And some of the suggestions, I'll be very honest with you guys, was a little bit lackluster. I thought, they weren't like fully baked. They seemed like, kind of threw it in there. So I would say two out of the three were like home runs, really good suggestions, and maybe one out of the three wasn't that great. Like that, it was all right. I felt a little bit of that feeling. It might have lacked some of the depth of that analysis and that discussion. But to their credit, anytime they make a suggestion, they literally say, "Do you hate it or do you love this? And if you hate it, tell me why." Like they're very open to feedback, right? I told them, I don't love this. Like, I have this issue, this issue. And we had a good discussion out of it, right? So I think that was very valuable. They're not afraid to challenge you, and they're not afraid to ask for feedback, which I thought was great. Okay. So I went through my session. I think it was really great. And then I got to sit through everyone else's session. Okay. Which I thought was awesome. And then at the end of the day, we all got together, our 8-person group, and they said, "Hey, let's all share our information." I created a WhatsApp group and we all shared our presentations. They give you, your digital presentation to take home and implement, right? And then at that session, at the VAM session, they tell you, "Hey, we are going to make sure that you book your next VAM day starting right now. Like you book it now." So they estimate it's going to take you about these many months to change this, to implement this. We're going to schedule you to come back and tell us how you're going and what's the new constraint. With a little bit of pressure on there, but I thought that was useful and I thought that was valuable to do, right? So anyways, that essentially was the VAM day, right? And then at the end of the day, there's a little bit, some snacks. And to be honest with you guys, it started at 8 in the morning. We finished, I think, at 6 p.m. in the afternoon. And I was spent. Like I was done. Like I had spent the whole day just really focused, really concentrated. Turn off your cell phone. I didn't even take my laptop with me on the trip, and for not even that day, didn't take it with me. I just wanted to have a chance to sit down, focus on growing my business and what are my biggest constraints. And that's what I did, right? So I thought it was a great use of time, but I was exhausted, right? So went in there. And then the next day, right, we got together and just shared our different presentations. And as a group, just gave each other some comments and feedback. It was like an informal networking the next day, right? Again, that's not part of the formal event, but I just did it. I just thought it was a smart thing to do and make sure we got some good information from each other, and we critiqued and sent some comments to each other, which I thought was awesome. But that's something we organize as a group, and I'm not sure everyone does that. But here's the big thing I wanted to tell you. If people are considering attending this in the future, they made some announcements that day, okay? And so one thing I'll tell you, I discovered during that event that I am probably on the third or fourth version of VAM to exist, right? What do I mean by that? Initially, the program was configured differently. The workshop was 2 days. The VAM was 2 days. There was 1 day of spotlight presentations and then another day of like masterminding. They got a lot of feedback that wasn't that good, right? So one thing I will say about acquisition.com and the Alex Hormozi Mastermind group, the whole advisory division, they are really good at taking people's feedback and quickly iterating and improving the program. Okay, like what I said initially, my biggest concern was that they might not go deep enough into these conversations with you and help you really drill in and solve these problems. So at that event, they announced the next version of VAM, right? The latest version, which was no longer going to be 1 day with a group of 8 people going to different advisors in different areas with 1 hour with each advisor. It said no. To give you a better chance to do more depth, my second VAM day was not going to be in that format anymore. It was going to be with just one advisor all day, 8 hours in the same room with them until we worked through every single question, feedback and constraint that I had, right? Which again, that was one of my concerns going in. And as I left that event, I'm like, wow, they totally understood that issue and they addressed it. They made changes to the program to make it better in that respect. Because I'm certain that they got a lot of feedback that was a concern and some of the suggestions weren't great because they didn't have enough time to go deep on what some of those suggestions were going to be and that game plan and that strategy they give you. Okay. So, and I'll give you an example. So to help us, for example, like improve our sales process and our new lead source, right? They gave suggestions on how to create ads, on the whole ad creative process, how to find a good person to help me with that. They gave a plan on how to either coach up or coach out, the members of my sales team, right? Like what to do, how to do it, with my I have leadership team and everything, how to implement that with my team to make it successful, like a detailed, like a step-by-step plan, right? And for our referral program, they gave me a bunch of best practices on how to scale up our referral program to make it more public, to ask more people about it, and to make it more formal and scale it really up. So a lot of those things were great, but I think it could also benefit from just more analysis, more discussion, more fleshing out the plan, right? And I think this new format, the new VAM, is going to be even better. And I'll be attending that in February, and you better believe I'm going to be making a new video on that whole process, right? So if you guys want to check it out, what the new VAM is going to be in February, check out. It'll be a few months. It'll be only like 3 months away. It should be a really interesting one, right? So be on the lookout for that one. So I think we're going to wrap it up, folks. I don't see any questions. If anyone has a question, drop it, right? Drop it in the chat. If you have any questions, any follow-up questions, anything specifically. One thing I did find out, which I was a little bummed about, I wasn't happy about this, is that I heard that in that scaling workshop, the latest version of that, Alex Hormozi no longer attends, right? They have another, again, a really great guy. His name is Ed Turney. He's amazing. He's really good at what he does, right? So I don't think the quality went down, but the star power, right, and the star-studded effect is definitely down on that event. So I really recommend people going to the scaling workshop, even if you're not going to do the high-level mastermind. I think that scaling workshop is so good that anyone can get a ton of value out of it. And if you have the ability and you're at the level where you can do like a really high level mastermind, you should definitely do that, right? But even if you only attend the scaling workshop, I think it's 100% worth it. There were people at that workshop from South Africa, from India, from Eastern Europe, from all over the US, Latin America, and it was really amazing. That was a really, really great event. And this one, even though it was a more exclusive event, there were folks from Latin America, Europe, and North America, right? So it was really crazy, the level of participation, right? So again, that was my experience, folks. Hopefully this has been really useful for you guys. And be on the lookout for the next one. In 3 months, I'll be releasing the next video on how that whole session went. All right? Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you guys.